Good morning, Marshall community. We are going to be continuing our journey through Peter Pan and exploring figurative language. So just like we've done before, I'm going to read and you are going to figure out what are some figurative language examples from the text. The great thing about this is that you're going to be able to pause the video at any time, stop it, go back, and you can also call me and ask me if you have any questions. Anyway, I miss all of you so much. And I hope you enjoy it. All right, so if you remember from the story, we are flying to Neverland, and Peter Pan is leading Wendy, John, and Michael. They have just flown into Neverland, and they are discussing what adventures they're going to have. They start first by talking about Captain Hook. Suppose, John said a little huskily, he were to wake up. He is obviously Captain Hook. Peter spoke indignantly. Do you know what indignantly means? You don't think I would kill him while he was sleeping? I would wake him up first, and then kill him. That's the way I always do. I say, do you kill many? Tons. John said, how ripping, but decided to have tea first. He asked if there were many pirates on the island just now. Peter said he had never known so many. Who is captain now? Hook, answered Peter, and his face became very stern as he said that hated word. Do you know what stern means? Just Hook? Aye. Then indeed Michael began to cry, and even John could speak in gulps only, for they knew Hook's reputation. He was Blackbeard's bosun, John whispered huskily. He is the worst of them all. He is the only man of whom Barbecue was afraid. That's him, said Peter. What is he like? Is he big? He is not so big as he was. Do you remember our discussion of that? What do you mean? Well, I cut him off a bit. You? Yes, me, said Peter sharply. I wasn't meaning to be disrespectful. Oh, all right. But I say, what bit? His right hand. Well, then he can't fight now. Oh, can't he just? Left-hander? He has an iron hook instead of a right hand, and he claws with it. Claws? I say, John, said Peter. Yes. Say, aye, aye, sir. Aye, aye, sir. There is one thing, Peter continued, that every boy who serves under me has to promise, and so must you. John paled. It is this. If we meet Hook in an open fight, you will leave him to me. I promise, John said loyally. For the moment, they were feeling less eerie because Tink was flying with them. And in her light, they could distinguish each other. Unfortunately, she could not fly so slowly as they, and so she had to go round and round them in a circle in which they moved as in a halo. Wendy quite liked it, until Peter pointed out the drawbacks. She tells me, he said, that the pirates sighted us before the darkness came and got Long Tom out. The big gun? Yes. And of course they must see her light, and if they guess we are near it, they are sure to let fly. Wendy! John! Michael! Tell her to go away at once, Peter, the three called simultaneously, but he refused. She thinks we have lost the way, he replied stiffly, and she is rather frightened. You don't think I would send her away all by herself when she is frightened? For a moment the circle of light was broken, and something gave Peter a loving little pinch. Then tell her, Wendy begged, to put her light out. She can't put it out. That is the thing about fairies. It is the only thing they cannot do. It just goes out of itself when she falls asleep, same as the stars. Then tell her to sleep at once, John almost ordered. She can't sleep except when she's sleepy. It's the only other thing fairies can't do. Seems to me, growled John, these are the only two things worth doing. He got a pinch, but not a loving one. If only one of us had a pocket, Peter said, we could carry her in it. However, they had set off in such a hurry, there was not a pocket between the four of them. He had a happy idea. John's hat! Tink agreed to travel by hat if it were carried in the hand. John carried it, though she had hoped to be carried by Peter. Presently Wendy took the hat because John said it struck against his knee as he flew, and this, as we shall see, led to mischief, for Tinker Bell hated to be under any obligation to Wendy. Why did she hate to be under any obligation to Wendy? Wonder how she feels about Wendy. In the black topper, the light was completely hidden. They flew on in silence. It was the stillest silence they had ever known. What do we think still silence means? What is not happening? What creates noise? Broken once by a distant lapping, which Peter explained was the wild beasts drinking at the ford. Again by a rasping sound that might have been the branches of trees rubbing together, but he said it was the redskins sharpening their knives. Do we think Peter is trying to make them feel better? Even as these noises ceased, to Michael the loneliness was dreadful. If only something would make a sound, he cried. As if in answer to his request, the air was rent. What does rent mean? By the most tremendous crash he had ever heard. The pirates had fired Long Tom at them. The roar of it echoed through the mountains, and the echoes seemed to cry savagely, "Where are they? Where are they? Where are they?" Do we remember what kind of literary device this is? What do we call it when something that is not human has human qualities? Thus sharply did the terrified three learn the difference between an island of make-believe and some island come true. What if the last, the heavens were steady again? John and Michael found themselves alone in the darkness. John was treading the air mechanically. What do we think this means? And Michael, without knowing how to float, was floating. "Are you shot?" John whispered tremulously. "I haven't tried yet," Michael whispered back. We know now that no one had been hit. Peter, however, had been carried by the wind of the shot far out to sea, while Wendy was blown upwards with no companion but Tinker Bell. It would have been well for Wendy if at that moment she had dropped the hat. So what do we think is going to happen? I don't know whether the idea came suddenly to Tink or whether she had planned it that way, but she at once popped out of the hat and began to lure Wendy to her destruction. What does lure mean? Tink was not all bad, or rather, she was all bad just now. But on the other hand, sometimes she was all good. Fairies had to be one thing or the other because being so small, they have only room for one feeling at a time. They are, however, allowed to change, only it must be a complete change. At present, she was full of jealousy of Wendy, so does she have room for any other emotions? When she said in her lovely tinkle, Wendy could not understand this, of course. I believe some of it was bad words, but they sounded kind. So she flew back and forward, plainly meaning, "Follow me, and all will be well." Do we think it's all going to be well? What else could poor Wendy do? She called to Peter and John and Michael and got only mocking echoes in reply. She did not know that Tink hated her with a fierce hatred of a very woman, and so bewildered, was now staggering in her flight, following Tink to her doom.
What's a doom?
And so we end chapter 4. All right. So for your follow-up work, I want you to go back to the video and find a few of our examples of figurative language. There were 2 specifically that I talked about. And then also, I want you to pick out 2 or 3 words that you're unfamiliar with, and I want you to look them up. And then I want you also to write what you think is going to happen next. All right. I love you all very much, and I will see you again tomorrow.